So let's try again. So I want to start over. What I'd really like, so I first learned about you kind of through Andy Stump. So I was listening to his podcast, Cleared Hot. And I really can't remember if I started following you on Instagram first or if I heard the podcast first and then I started following you on Instagram. I'm not sure. But I remember you kind of talking about your story a little bit, and you kind of come from a unique background, right? You didn't really have kind of like I guess like the white picket fence kind of upbringing. You know, there's been a lot of things that have happened through your life that maybe have kind of shaped the direction that you've taken. So I really want to, kind of talk about that a little bit, right? Because when we, in the dietitian community, there's not a lot of diversity or adversity. And I think it needs to be brought out that, not everybody has this sort of the same beginning. So if you're comfortable with it, I'd really like for you to kind of talk about, just kind of yourself.
Yeah. You know what? Every time I bring up certain things, it does get easier. And once I bring it out there, I realize that, I agree with you. Like, not that many people have ran into people like that, so they may not understand or even know. But I'm the first one in my family to be born in the United States. We were poor, and there's not much resources that are available to you because of that, whether it be food, educational resources, or you name it. So growing up, I would see Army soldiers, and I looked up to them. They were real life heroes. Batman's was a cartoon, Superman was a cartoon. That's fake. But U.S. soldiers, I thought that was the top of the top. That was real. That's something that I can look up to, and I wanted to be. I would daydream a lot that I could do that. I would play with plastic soldiers from like the plastic bag of soldiers that you could get from 99-cent store, and I would play with them in the dirt all day. Just daydream about that. And 9/11 happened. So, but I was in elementary, so I didn't think I'd even join. I thought I would miss that war, but as soon as I turned 17 and a half, it was still going. And then being 17 and then having to get to an age where this country has, provided a lot for my family and I. So, my mom found resources that, through, was it state or federal or whoever is in charge of it, but that put that government cheese and all that put food on my table, in our bellies. That if it weren't for those programs, we weren't going to have that. So I saw it as the country had been taking care of my family and I, and now it's time for me to do my part and take care of the country.
Yeah, absolutely. I think whenever I'm working with someone who's looking to go into the military or to serve, my first question to them is always why? Why do you want to do this? Are you doing it because you see the cool guy stuff on TV or on Instagram? Or do you really understand kind of what you're doing, what you're getting into, especially when I come across somebody who wants to serve in the special operations community? If you're just doing it for the clout, the accolades, and not because you necessarily, sometimes, I really feel like you have to be called to that profession. So my question is always kind of why people are doing it. And that was kind of why I had asked you that question is, what drove you to kind of want to be in special operations and kind of serve that way. So once you made the decision to join the military, what led you down your path that you went into the Ranger Regiment? Would you be interested in talking about that?
Yeah. So I would go to my friend's house a lot before I joined, and he had cable, so I would watch the military channel on the Discovery Channel, and they would have a lot of specials on the current war, so what's happening in Iraq and Afghanistan. And I noticed that IEDs had a big part in either wounding or killing soldiers. So I wanted to do something that would affect that. I didn't know what way, so I had like a little pre-made speech that I was going to give the recruiter, and I was like super nervous, and I was practicing all week, and it basically was something like, you know, my name's Ranger Cortes. I would like to join. I keep seeing on television that, you know, IEDs kill a lot of soldiers. Is there a job that would, you know, attack those people who make them, or find those people, find the things, and destroy them? Like, and then they told me 2 different, you know, MOSs, so I could either be EOD or a combat engineer, and I wasn't the best student. So when they explained EOD and all the schooling, I knew right away. I was like, I'm not gonna make EOD. I barely passed. The only classes I ever passed was math and PE, you know. I was like, so I was like, okay, combat engineer it is. So I did that. And then after going to Iraq, spent a couple months there, and developing as a soldier and individual, you know, I was fortunate enough to have great leadership, and they saw something in me. And I always ask them, like, what, you know, what did you see in me? Why would you spend so much extra time on me? And they're like, well, we saw something that you wanted. You know, you weren't the fastest, you weren't the smartest, but you wanted to try. And when we see that, it makes it a lot easier to, you know, put some of your personal time into somebody. And after 2-3 years of this being molded by these individuals, they were like, hey man, you should probably go, you know, SF or be a ranger. And I was like, I want to. And they really helped me believe in myself. And then I made the push, because after spending a few years, yes, I was doing my part, but I wanted to do more of a direct, bigger missions, bigger high value targets and stuff like that. And, you know, there's only one way to see if you're made, you know, for it. And I dropped that packet, prepared myself as much as I could, and, you know, I was successful. So
I definitely want to talk about how you prepared yourself for the physical component too. But before we get into that, you know, what are some of maybe the barriers or some of the things that you had to deal with kind of leading up to dropping that packet? Because, you know, another question I get a lot of times is, you know, well, what about my age? What about, you know, my physical fitness? You know, what about just a lot of different questions, and I'm not necessarily equipped to answer them. But, you know, what do you feel like are some of the challenges or some of the barriers that you came across kind of trying to get to that point where you were accepted to go to RASP?
Well, there's 2, I would say 2 categories on, you know, that whole barrier thing. One, me being prior service, I mean, not prior, well, yeah, being in the military, is that some of the higher ups in my unit weren't as, you know, cooperative. They were for sure making, you know, just simple appointments on the packet of like, hey, you have to go get your eyes checked, you have to go get this, you have to get blood work and stuff like that. They would not give me time to do that, so I would have to find time for that, and in some cases, you know, make time when I was supposed to be somewhere else doing something else. So there's that. And then, but I think something that applies to everybody, whether you're in the military or not, is not knowing how to prepare. Because at least I think now there's more videos and stuff like that about like what's happening on, but in 2008, it was, you know, who knew? There was no videos out there. There was no, you know, people explaining what you're going to do and not do. So all you kind of knew was like, okay, well, I got to be able to ruck. I got to be able to do as much as whatever. So I kind of just freed it, to be honest. I knew there were certain requirements, like you have to run 5 miles in under 40 minutes. You have to ruck 12 miles in less than 3 hours, and you had to, you know, max a PT test. So I just wanted to do all of that, get as close as to or fast as in any category. And I did, but one thing that I did lack, and at the time I didn't really think about too much, was nutrition.
Mm-hmm. So kind of, and you're in dietetic school right now. So you're getting ready to graduate soon? How much longer do you have left?
I have 10 months left.
Okay, and then you're going to start internship, right?
Yes, you know, actually, I start applying for that later on this semester, so we'll see.
You're going to crush it. So kind of knowing what you know now about nutrition, and I know you're kind of just starting out, but, you know, kind of knowing what you know about nutrition and training maybe now, you know, what would you do differently if you could go back and kind of, you were in that position and you could sort of retrain and redo things to prepare for that? What would you do differently?
Oh, there's so much. I don't even know where to start, but I would say the biggest thing is food first. You know, I got to admit, you know, the supplement companies, they got me. If it said it was going to help you recover or improve, you know, your strength or whatever, I bought it. So just money thrown out, you know, but now what I know is that, you know, food first, food works. So I would have for sure added more fruits and vegetables. I completely would have cut down on the protein. I was taking too much protein. And then for like runs or rucks, I was like, oh, I got to carb up. And it was the wrong carbs. You know, it was the pizza and the burgers and the chips. Like it's not going to help you out like that. You know, and I would say for sure cut all the junk food. Like this whole like, oh, you're going to work it out. Not really. I was consuming way more calories than I was thinking. And then I was not burning as much as I thought it was.
Mm-hmm.
And then not going out to eat just because some companies do fool you, like Subway. Yeah, it's eat fresh, but you're not supposed to eat a foot long.
Like an entire loaf of bread in one sitting.
Yeah, you're not supposed to do that.
Yeah, no, yeah, absolutely. I think that's good advice. So when I'm, you know, when I'm working, I have a lot of times I have pictures sent to me or people will ask me about supplements and I'm like, well, what is your day-to-day nutrition look like? Are you even eating enough? You know, where are you at with your weight? Are you even in, you know, at the right, weight or body composition to even start a process like that? I think we rely a lot on supplements just because we don't know any better. So food first, I totally agree.
Yeah.
Do you think that, do you think it would have made a huge difference kind of in the way your career progressed if you had known a little bit more about how to take better care of yourself during that time?
Yes, I think certain things I would have that I went for. I think I would have done them a lot sooner. You know, I didn't drop a packet to enter 75th Ranger Regiment until 3.5 years. I think if I would have known about nutrition and how to properly exercise, I would have prepared myself probably within a year. But it just took that long of me realizing what works and what doesn't work, and finding the right you know, information from the right source.
Mm-hmm. So in the military for about 3 years, dropped your packet, went to RASP, and
Yeah,
so
it's
what was, mm-hmm.
so since I was prior service, and they have had some issues with prior service guys, they're like, hey man, it's not personal, but you get a one shot at this, okay? There's, you know, you have to pass so-and-so, so-and-so, and then you're in. There's no redos. There's no, if you get hurt, come back. So in 1 year, I had to do RASP, Airborne School, CERT, Ranger School, and Master Breacher. So yeah, so after all of that, then I had my permanent slot. So it took, even though I had already passed RASP, it took almost a whole year for me to feel like, okay, I can breathe. I'm in.
Yeah, I think that's, so RASP, and then you did Master Breacher.
Yep.
And
Airborne School.
Airborne School. Because they're doing Airborne School after RASP now.
Yeah, because so many dudes, they just wanted Airborne. So if they couldn't get that under contract, they'd be like, okay, let me get a Ranger contract, and then Airborne School is in it. So they would just pass Airborne School, and then they would get to pre-RASP and be like, hey, I quit. And
Damn.
then, yeah.
Okay, so RASP, Ranger School, and then Master Breacher. Did I miss
Yep.
anything?
CERT.
CERT, right? So for people who don't know what CERT is actually, that's before Ranger School, correct?
Yep. Yeah,
Mm-hmm.
it's called small unit ranger tactics. And that I think that on its own should be its own course, because I learned so much from the cadre. They really wanted to set us up for success. And at the time, they were doing the cadre exchange with SAS. So we had British special operation guys in our CERT as cadre. So that was a unique experience, working with another country's special operations, and then seeing how they would attack, Ranger School and all that.
And then after CERT, did you have the opportunity to then go on to Ranger School?
Yeah, the next week we went.
And a lot of guys, Ranger School is no joke. I mean, I think it's one of the most sought after schools, especially for leadership training, even for guys in the big Army. And then, of course, if you're in regiment, can you really call yourself a Ranger if you haven't been to Ranger School?
Yes, it's like that. That's funny, because a lot of people don't know that, but you have to go to Ranger School, because if not, it's not part of the contract, and it's not stated anywhere. But everybody knows if you don't go to Ranger School, you're not going to make it long in regiment. You're going to get kicked out. So you need both. You need the tab and the scroll. So yeah, it's like a unofficial official thing.
Yeah, and Ranger School, I would say, just from some of the guys that I've talked to, I would say that I've heard that Ranger School is definitely more challenging, right? Because you're kind of just under load the entire time, right? You practically live with a rucksack on your back, right? There, maybe a couple of MREs
Yep.
a day. A lot of the guys, they lose a ton of weight.
Yeah, I lost 30 pounds, and me being a little guy, 30 pounds to me is a lot. I remember when I first got the chance to in mountain phase to look in the mirror, I was like, it's only been whatever, like 2 weeks or 2.5 weeks, and I did not look like myself. Everything was sucked in, and I was just like, oh my God.
What do you think are some of the biggest mistakes you see guys make, or people make, when they're preparing to go to Ranger School?
I would say they overtrain, and I think that comes from the fear and anxiety of like not being able to make it, because unfortunately I knew some dudes that their knee was already hurt, their shoulder was already hurt, or their ankle was already, because they were rucking too much with like super heavy weight. And that's not how you do it. For example, when I'm running marathons during the training, we never actually run a marathon for the marathon. You get as closest to it as possible, and then that's it. So, but what I mean by that is that you hear that, in Ranger School, a ruck sometimes might be like 100 pounds after if you got into the swamp and stuff. Well, that doesn't necessarily mean you should ruck with 100 pounds. Like, don't do that. Like, for example, for myself, the max I ever did was 55 pounds. So I would say overtraining.
Yeah, I totally agree. So just to give you an example, I mean, I come across the same thing. I had a guy, he called me up a couple of weeks ago, and we were kind of talking. He was actually not in the military yet, but he was hoping to enter and, secure a soft contract. And I kind of asked him about what he had been doing, and this guy had just been doing training program after training program after training program for like 2 years straight. No deloading, no rest really, and was starting to actually have symptoms of overreaching, blunted appetite, not sleeping well, feeling like he couldn't recover. And, and I asked him, I was like, when was the last time you just took a break? And he couldn't even tell me. So I think tapering, is something that we talked about. I've had the opportunity to actually work with some guys that are actually getting ready to go to certain Ranger School. Same thing, one of the things that I always talk to them about is kind of that taper, 2 or 3 weeks before you go, you not trashing your body completely, all the way up until 0 day, but taking like that last 2 or 3 weeks maybe to optimize your sleep, your hydration, get your mind right. What do you think about that? What are some words of advice you could give kind of around that?
For, I think, mental strength. So people ask me that all the time. So for RAS, from Ranger School, can I get some advice? And I tell them, yes, it's physically demanding, but it's more mental than anything. You have to believe in yourself, and you have to have certain, like, many boxes of motivation or your why. Like, I'm doing this because I want to progress in my career. I want to do this because I want to test myself physically and mentally. I want to do this because I want to prove some. I want my dad to be proud because he was a Ranger too, or whatever it may be. You need many reasons on what to carry you mentally, because you're going to be physically exhausted, but most likely if people quit, it's because they're mentally just exerted. And I would, and others would find, like, pick-me-ups, or a picture of our wives, or a picture of our kids, or a picture of something, because you need something. Your mental strength, yes, it's going to get tested, but you need something to keep it going, because that's the number one thing that is going to take you from day 0 to graduation. And believing in yourself, and it sounds corny, but, like, your body is capable of doing way more than you think.
I've heard that. I've heard, your mind gives out way before your body does. So just finding that one thing, hold on to it, right? So, because your physical, when you feel like you've hit your physical limitation, right? It's that thought process and that mindset where you're at. Do you feel like that's what's going to take you kind of that final lap?
Yeah, and it's okay to be nervous, and it's okay to have moments of like, damn, like, this is too much, or like, this is a lot. But that right there is just an internal battle. And it's just whether you call it fear, anxiety, or something, but that's an internal battle that a lot of us have, and maybe a lot of us don't voice. I had a guy who called me, and he's a stud, and he had already gone to RASP, and he's like, hey man, can I call you? And I was like, okay. And he's like, I'm super nervous. Like, I'm really nervous. And I had never heard him speak like that. And everything that he had gone to, he was killing it. And then I'm like, hey man, like, how are you feeling? It's okay. Like, I felt that way. And when I said that, he was like, really? And I was like, yeah, man, like, doubt is okay, but you can't, let that kill your motivation, your drive, and say, like, okay, I'm going to quit. No, like, having that is perfectly okay. It's just don't quit.
Yeah. Do you feel like sometimes there's, like, this stigma, not just within Ranger Regiment or Special Operations, but just in the military in general, that, like, it's not okay to feel those feelings, like, be nervous, be afraid, like, it's not okay to, kind of manifest that?
Yeah, that for sure is, I think it's an issue. I think it's, like, we all, even I did it at certain times in my career, like, try to fool each other, but it's human nature to feel that way. I don't know of anybody who's not ever had those thoughts during anything. Like, I have trained with and fought alongside, just about every special operation unit that the U.S. has, and then even on the outside, talk to them, and we've all said, like, hey, at one point, oh yeah, I didn't know if I was going to make it, but then I would see this guy continue, so I would do it. And so to think that, hey, none of us feel that way, that's the wrong way. I think it would do us a lot, more good if we voiced it, and then you just had good friends to say things like, hey man, like, that's okay, but you're going to crush this, and later on we're going to laugh about this statement that you just made, okay? Because that's just like your inner bitch coming out or whatever. Yeah.
No, I think, yeah, and my hope is, and I don't know if you've heard about this, so the Army's kind of trying to focus a little bit more on not so much just, kind of the institutional like things that they've always done, and there's really kind of this push to really focus more on the individual soldier, right? So recently, I don't know if you've heard this, but FM 7-22, which is like the personal physical training manual for the military, has changed a lot. And October 1st, it actually changed the holistic health and fitness. And it's like this 250-page manual, and it focuses on nutrition, periodized training, sleeping, mental resilience, just, you know, spiritual well-being as well. So it's just like this huge culture shift going on. And so I think the hope is kind of like some of that, you know, can be addressed or start being addressed in the next probably decade or two. But, you know, within the special operations community, they've kind of always had, you know, like strength coaches and dietitians and mental resilience and behavioral health kind of individuals. You know, but I think the hope is that culture is going to start to change a little bit. So we'll see what happens with that.
You know, I think that's a good thing. It's a great thing, and I wish we would have done it a long time ago, but I mean, we're doing it now, so that's good, because that's so true. Because if you want to have, you know, an optimized soldier, like, well, every category of that individual or a human being needs to be at its peak. And you're not going to get top performance when, you know, mentally, you know, you have problems, or physically, whether it be nutrition wise or exercise wise, or just sleep or mood or whatever it may be. I think the more we take care of our soldiers, I think the quality and performance is going to, you know, go up.
Mm-hmm. And I think we're starting to move that way. So that's my hope anyway. But now kind of moving away from that, I want to go into what you're doing now. So you're out of the military now, you know, you have a family, you're going to school, and you've made this transition into wanting to be a dietitian. So how did that all come about? Like, why dietetics, you know, from being a ranger to a dietitian? Like, how did that evolution happen?
Well, one of the plus of being in a special operation units is that you have more resources, and you know, you have a bigger budget. So of course we have all the cool guy gear and all that, but we also have private facilities of, you know, multi-million-dollar gyms that are equipped with physical therapists, physical trainers, registered dietitians. And I didn't know what a registered dietitian was, to be honest, but I got hurt in Afghanistan, and I was working with our physical therapist and then our strength and conditioning coach. And I started believing in, like, oh, now I understand why there's professions. Like, I used to think I knew everything about training. No, I didn't. So after working with our strength and conditioning coach, I walked by and I saw a sign that said registered dietitian. And I was like, what does that even mean? It's got the word diet in it, so it's probably got to be something about how you eat. And I'm like, okay, well, if I've been working with all these people, I should probably work with that individual as well. And it just happened that RD was the only female on the team. So I'm like, okay, she's here for a reason. I should go talk to her. And I went to go talk to her, and I don't know how long she'd been there, but she already knew how to talk to us, because the first thing she told me was, what would you do with your eating habits if I can make you stronger and faster by 5 to 10%? And then that environment, 5-10% it's huge. It's big. It's huge. So I was like, I'll do anything. You tell me what to do. Tell me what to eat. And you know, we got my reading. So I went on a scale. First thing in the morning, so, you know, nothing in the belly, was wearing only nothing but my PT shorts, and we got our numbers, and she asked me a million questions, and then she's like, okay, this is going to be your meal plan. Try it out for 2 weeks and come back and tell me what or how you feel. And I remember the first time my wife made the meal plan, I didn't believe, like, that this is how much I was supposed to eat. Because first of all, the protein, I used to eat a whole chicken breast for dinner. So when she came to the plate with 3 or 4 ounces of a lean meat, I was like, what is this? She's like, this is what the plan is, said. And I was like insulted. I was like, this is not 4 ounces of lean meat. And it got to a point where I even went back to go weigh it. She's like, you don't believe me? And I was like, okay. And then I was like, okay, well, okay. She said I have to eat this, so I'm going to eat it. And in 2 weeks, I felt like I was recovering a lot faster. I wasn't having these crashes in the middle of the day. I had more energy. And yes, I was, getting stronger and faster just in 2 weeks. But the biggest thing was like recovery. I used to do a workout and then still feel sore, or not maybe energized for the next workout. That completely changed. My mood changed. My sleeping improved. And I was like, man, like this is a game changer. So, and I was also competing in martial arts, so specifically Muay Thai. So I followed her plan for that fight. I won, and how I was feeling, it helped me, and it hit me like real hard that I was like, if I'm feeling this way, I should probably apply this to my children and to my wife as well. They're not training, but like they need these nutrients, they need all the vitamins and minerals and stuff like that. And my kids were really young, so I had enough time it was a battle though, to change this whole, go to a restaurant and them only eat from the kids menu that's only filled with fries and grilled cheeses and mac and cheese. And then so if they started seeing me eat fruits and vegetables, so then they began to eat fruits and vegetables. And I was like, okay, well, this is helping us overall. This is helping everybody. And then next thing you know, it was time to get out. I was so engulfed in being a Ranger that I got a call. They're like, hey man, you're like a couple months out of your ETS date, so you gotta re-up or get out. And I told them I had missed a lot, for my kids and wife. Both my kids, I'd been overseas when they were born. So I told my wife a long time ago, I was like, I know I missed a lot, but when our kids go to school, I will be there for the first day of school. And my son was 4, so I was like, okay, or he's about to turn 4. So I was like, okay, school's about to start. It's time for me to either get out or sign up for more years. And no one in my family had gone to college. And I realized that, yes, me being in the military was helping my family out a lot. I would send money, or, just me being what I've been doing has brought pride to my family. But money is good and all, but sometimes what people need is you to physically be there. So I was like, okay, it's time for me to go home. I need to be there. Yes, if I had another double of me, I would make the other guy stay, because I loved it. I wanted to be there. And people always told me, dude, you're a lifer. Like, I'm like, no, I'm not. They're like, dude, you're a lifer. Like, look at you, you love this. And I did, and I still do, but my kids are more important. And my family's more important than my personal needs of wanting to stay in. But the question was, okay, if now I want to tackle this for myself and for my family, I want to go to college, but what am I going to go to school for? And I thought about it for maybe a day, and I was like, registered dietitian. I'm like, because I wanted to continue my service for the country, and I saw that being a registered dietitian, you can help out people. And by helping out people, yes, it will be more local, like I'll be helping out my community. But maybe that's what I needed to be doing. And I'm not gonna lie, I was scared, I was nervous. Like I said, in high school, I was a terrible student, but I figured if I just apply myself like I did in the military to school, I should at least get passing grades. So that on its own, I have to admit, I was scared and I was nervous. But I started school, I started applying myself like I did in the military, and I was just hoping for C's, but I was getting A's and B's. So I was like, okay.
Big difference. I think that And, you know, I can totally relate. So I went into the service at 17, obviously not combat arms, right? So I went into sort of the medical side, working as a 68 mic, which is nutrition care. And, you know, I did like 7 years, and that time came for me to ETS, and I, you know, having my first child, and I was like, okay, well, you know, I want to be a mom. You know, I've been deployed twice. My husband at the time had been deployed 3 times. You know, missed all of his kids, you know. And I was like, okay, I'm going to get out and be a mom. And kind of that first 6 months of getting out, you know, when you come of age in the military, it's like, well, what the hell do I do now? You know, you know, I felt I didn't do a really good job, you know, of kind of like figuring out my life before I got out of the military. So I think like 6 months after I got out, I was like right back in a recruiter's office, been like, what can I possibly do if I decide to go back into the military, right? But so yeah, it's super scary. And then I think 6 months after that, I found myself in dietitian school too. So getting A's and B's when previously I think I had given it the old college try when I was like 18 and in the military out of basic. I did like a couple of college classes, and I think I was failing algebra at the time. So, so to go back to college, you know, 10 years later or whatnot, and then, you know, actually be excelling, I think was kind of a surprise for me as well. So I can totally relate to that.
No, yeah. And I have to say, you know, I used all the resources because like how I use all the resources, you know, the strength and conditioning coach and the RD and the physical therapist at school. I was like, okay, these resources are here for a reason. And I mean, I'm not the best writer. I'm not the best of everything. So I would go to the tutor center when school was over. Yes, it was tempting to go with friends and you know, get a drink or whatever, but I knew what I had to do. So I used the tutor center, the writing center, everything and anything that the school had to offer. I was like, okay, I'm going to use it so I can pass. And you know, it's helped a lot. And I recommend everybody. That's why it's one of the things I tell veterans is like, use all your resources. Okay. Like trust me.
Yeah, absolutely. So now that you're kind of towards the finish line, right? Or getting closer to the finish line of being a dietitian, once you kind of finish your internship and you start your career, what do you feel like, and I know it's kind of soon, but what do you feel like is going to be out there for you? Like, where are you going to kind of take that as a dietitian? Are you looking to get back into kind of like a tactical setting? Maybe even, you know, being that civilian dietitian, like in a special operations community, or where are you thinking you're going to go?
Well, yes. Like I thought I in the beginning, I was like, I want to be that RD at, you know, maybe a Ranger unit or whatever. But then we have, you know, registered dietitians come and talk to us for one of my classes. You know, one of them was from WIC, and they were talking about we need RDs and stuff like that in low income communities to educate the community. So, you know, because low income communities have a lot of issues because of their food choices and availability and stuff like that. And they were saying that they don't have a lot of Spanish speakers. And I think of who I am, I think I can communicate and reach, you know, like for example, a low income Hispanic community that I used to be part of. So I think I might do that for a while. But I will also help, you know, local fire departments or PDs. Actually, fire departments like, hey man, I know you're not certified, but if you can give us some advice, maybe a video or a PowerPoint, like I would love that. So I think I'll do both. Or honestly, I don't know. I mean, things change. Like I didn't even think I would consider trying to work for WIC, but here I am thinking like, okay, maybe something like that or whatever program or agency works in those communities, you know? And then on top of that, other doors and I've been opening, you know, and I'm not gonna lie, I miss it to this day. I mean, I've been out 4 years and I still miss it. So I don't know. Who knows?
So I finished college, when I was older too. So I was actually 30 when I graduated with my undergrad and started my internship. And I think you're in a place, and this is just me talking. I think like with where you come from, where you've been, and the experience that you have, and I think the drive and the passion that you have, I really think like the world is 100% your oyster. If you can sort of face the challenges that you've already faced in your life, and you've already taken kind of every tool that you had and applied it to where you are now. I mean, you could really work wherever you wanted, I think, and excel. And that's just my personal opinion. So I'm gonna toot your horn for a second there. So I think you have a lot of I think you have like just you could do anything. I mean, really, you could. And I think also, one of the things that I've come across is a lot of dietitians feel like they get pigeonholed, or they get stuck where they're like, oh, I have to work in a certain job for so long, or oh, I want to do this, but I can't, or like for me, I had a family already. Like I had kids and I was married and I was older when I became a dietitian, and I knew I wanted to get into sports in some way, but I couldn't leave. Like sports nutrition, traditionally, you got to like pick up and leave, and quality of life is to be perfectly honest, not really that great, because you're working like 18-hour days plus. You're there early in the morning, you're there late in the evening, and that was just something that I couldn't do. So, I had to kind of create some of my own opportunities, and I think I have no doubt that if you needed to do something like that to get to where you want to be, you could totally do it.
No, I appreciate, the kind words, and that is how I feel. I feel like, I could do a lot of good, and some approaches are going to be like very fun and maybe bring in a lot of money. But one of the biggest things I think is going to drive me is where can I help the most people? Because that, even if somebody offered me a job that's a lot of money, but I'm not helping anybody but myself in my pocket, I can't do it.
Yeah.
I would probably say my upbringing and the people who have helped me have molded that within me, that it's, I got to be helping people in some way.
Yeah. Yeah, I totally agree, 100%. And then on top of that, you have like a very entrepreneurial side to you as well. Is it okay if we talk about OG Pumpkin? Because I don't know if you noticed or not.
Yes, I did notice.
But I'm repping my worldwide today.
Yes. Yeah. So how that came about, it's funny because I actually didn't start calling myself a businessman until a few months ago. So when I got out, clearly I didn't hang out with my old crowd. Before that, I was a troublemaker. So I wasn't hanging when I came out. I didn't start kicking it with the homies and stuff like that again. And I lost my sense of purpose for sure. And I didn't know that when I got out. I was happy. It was like, I call it the honeymoon stage. Everything was great. Everyone's happy to see me. But after a while, like 3 months, I realized the emptiness. And I'm like, well, I started uploading old pictures and videos, and then people started contacting me who were interested in the special operations community. And it all started the same way. Like their messages are like, hey man, no offense, but you're small. So how did you make it into the 75th Ranger Regiment? And I was like, dude, because it's mostly mental. I mean, you just believe in yourself and keep going. And then I would tell them what I did to physically prepare. And then, a bunch of my cool guy videos and pictures started getting a bunch of views, and some of them have gone like millions of views, and people have watched it from all over the world. And then I started answering the same questions over and over about, how to be a Ranger, how to become a Ranger. That I started a YouTube channel, not because I wanted to be a YouTuber, but because I would be writing these messages and answering the same questions like 20 times a day. And I was like, okay, just watch this video. And if you have more questions, then hit me back up, but watch this video. And then that created a following. And while I was going to school, a lot of people don't know, but I mean, your education benefits from being a veteran, you get paid while you're in school, and it's a good amount of money if you save it. But when you're not in the semester, you got to find a job. And I didn't know that. So next thing you know, I'm working at, odd jobs at a yogurt shop. And I'm not going to lie, it was kind of rough because some of the customers sucked, and I couldn't help look at myself and be like, dude, you used to be an Army Ranger. You had a house, you had a career, and now you're getting yelled at by a teenager for minimum wage. Like, this fucking sucks. So companies would send me, stuff like my friends' companies. So they would send me stickers or T-shirts, and I would always post it so they could get traffic. And people would ask me like, "Hey, dude, is that your shirt or is that your sticker?" I'm like, "No, but it's my friend's company. You can buy it over there." And for years, people were like, "Dude, you got to start your own thing. You got to start your own thing." And I was like, I'm not a businessman. I don't know anything about art or the T-shirt company or I don't know any of that. And then I was gonna have my third child, and my wife was like, "Hey, like, I know you love the veteran community, the active, duty community, and at the same, I would host UFC fights in my house, and I would buy the pay-per-view, and I would buy the food, and I would do this a couple times a month, and it adds up, that money adds up." So she's like, "We can't be doing this anymore. We're gonna have a third child." And me being who I am, I was like, she is right, but I'm not gonna stop. So that means I need to find a solution for that. And I was like, okay, I'm gonna start a company. I was like, I'll make a sticker first, but I didn't know of what. I didn't want to just make some random thing and then just try to sell it. I want it to mean something. And in a lot of my combat footage, I have skeleton gloves, and I'm wearing a skeleton bandana, or I would have a mask, and because I like Halloween. So I was like, I want it to be something like that. And at the same time, around that time, my son drew a pumpkin, and he's like, "Oh, this is for you." And I was like, "Oh, can I have this?" And he's like, "Yeah, this is for you." I was like, and I saw the pumpkin, and I was like, immediately, I was like, this is going to be the logo of the company, and this is going to be my first sticker. So I got it tattooed on me, and then I made 100 stickers, and I'm like, okay, let me try this thing. And I said, who wants a sticker? On Instagram, I made the post, who wants a sticker? And I thought I was going to maybe send like 7 of them or something. All 100 of them were spoken for that day. So you have my wife and I writing 100 envelopes to sending them from, I'm talking about all over the world, Germany, Spain, places in the United States that I've never been to, places in the United States that, to be honest, I didn't even think who I am and where I come from that story would even reach there. Let alone for them to care. So I was like, okay. So that was my first shirt. And like that, it picked up. And now, the income came. So I was still allowed to do the UFC events and stuff like that at my house. And the next, I started hosting, shooting ranges for veterans to come by. And then I sponsor guys the guys who used to message me, like, how do I prepare? They're high school kids or college kids, and college kids, for the most part, they're broke. So I started this program like, okay, well, if you're a high school kid or a college kid, and you're trying to be in whatever special operations units it may be, it doesn't even have to be a Ranger. Like, what gear do you need? Because gear's expensive, let alone just the boots alone is expensive. So I sponsor every month. I put that out there like, hey, this month I'm doing it again. Who needs something? And I bought fins, rucks, boots, whatever it is that they need. I send them the money. And with this whole COVID thing, then I started doing buying food and giving to food banks. And even then, I didn't even consider this a business. I was just like, oh, I'm just hustling. And next thing you know, I get the LLC, and it becomes more official. And then I was like, and then I got to be on Andy Stump's podcast and Mike Rillin's, and that really changed my point of view, because them were like, dude, you're a businessman. Like that's what you have is a business. And I'm like, you know what, you're right. So I've been doing that, and it's helped a lot. So that's kind of where I'm at now. Like I sell this stuff so I can help out people, and also so I don't have to work an odd end job in between semesters. So it's working out.
So it's the OG Pumpkin. So if people want to find it on Instagram, it's at OG Pumpkin, right?
Yes, it's at _OG_pumpkin. Yeah, so like I knew it was a pumpkin, but I didn't even know what the business was going to be called. I was just like, okay, I looked up pumpkin on Instagram, and of course pumpkin is taken. And then I was like, okay, maybe, original pumpkin, as in like this is the original shirt or the original design. And then that was taken. And then I was like, maybe the OG, because OG, is for like original and then I was like, okay, well, you know what? And then the OG was available. So I was like, okay, the OG pumpkin it is.
I love it. No, I follow you. I love the stuff that you're doing. I love the stickers. I love the shirts. I know we just ordered a bunch of stuff. So I have a bunch of your stickers on my canteen. I actually have one sitting on my desk. So here too. I haven't figured out. Oh, my husband said it's his. I'm claiming it. But I haven't figured out where I'm going to put it yet. Yeah, but I love it. I mean, the worldwide shirt's one of my favorites. And just knowing, so I didn't even know you were doing all of that kind of with your business, right? So like when I found you and I was kind of like, we put all this stuff in our cart and we bought it, I was really just loved the way it looked. And then we were really just looking to support you, right? But kind of knowing like all this other stuff that you're doing with it, I mean, it just makes it even that more amazing. So definitely, if you guys haven't gone over to at the OG Pumpkin, you got to make sure you check it out.
Thank you.
Awesome. All right, awesome. So if people do want to contact you, or if they're interested in asking you questions or wanting to work with you, is that something that you're open to kind of fielding questions about?
Yes. So my message that Instagram or my personal Instagram account. My personal Instagram is Angel G Cortes 175. And yeah, just message me, and then I try to answer everybody as detailed as possible. And then a lot of the questions I've already answered, so I just send them to the YouTube channel and be like, hey man, instead of writing you 2 or 3 sentences, like here's a full video that goes more into detail, so you get a better answer as opposed to me just trying to tell you a few things. Yeah, that. And then if you,
sorry, the YouTube channel, is it the YouTube channel? If people want to find you on YouTube, is it under your name?
Yeah. Well, this one, it's called Ranger Cortes, and I called it Ranger Cortes because I was like, again, one of the things about the YouTube channel is like, I'm not a YouTuber. Like it took me forever just to create it, which by the way, there's probably a teenager right now who's like, I can do it in 5 minutes. So it took me forever. And it was like super late at night. And I'm like, what do I call this thing? Like, how do I tell people my name and then that I was also a Ranger? And then because I was so tired, it reminded me of Ranger school, of because you're sleep deprived and sometimes you do foolish things, and the cadre just like in this tone would be like, Ranger Cortes, what the fuck are you doing? And so that just made me laugh, and I was like, you know what, I'm gonna call it Ranger Cortes. So it's not even like Ranger Cortes, like, hey, I'm a Ranger, my name's Cortes. No, it's like when you're acting like an idiot and the cadre's calling you out.
That's hilarious. And it's Cortes with an S, so Cortes. I want to make sure everybody knows that. All right, awesome.
And then if you're local to Southern California, come out to I train at a boxing gym called Raw Talent Boxing, and then at a Muay Thai and Jiu-Jitsu gym called Classic Fight Team. And I tell people all the time, like, hey, if you're interested in anything, just come by, try it out for free. And I've had, at this point, like a few dozen come out, even for a class. And then some of them have stayed there, and they still train to this day.
That's awesome. All right, man. So I am so glad that we did this because, you know, like I said, I had heard a little bit about your story, but I just love everything that we talked about today. I love kind of where you've been, where you're at. Man, I love your attitude. I love your heart. You have a huge heart that's amazing. And I definitely want you to come back and kind of chat with me again once you're on the other side of internship and you've got that RD at the end of your name, all right?
Yeah, of course, of course. And then, yeah, I got to bring it up. I can't believe how it went out. Is that you won one of the things I was giving out on Instagram. I had my son
Oh
pick the
yeah,
numbers.
yeah. I won the little sugar skull.
Yeah, I had my son pick the numbers. So he picked the numbers first for both people, and then I just typed in Shopify. I was like, okay, what is this number? And yours was the first one that came up, and I was like, no way. I was like, I'm actually gonna do the podcast with her tomorrow. So it's
That's
perfect.
awesome. Yeah, I'm so excited. So as soon as it gets here, like the inside of my house, my husband and I, like we're very minimalist kind of type people. So like the stuff on the wall behind me is literally the only thing hanging up in our house right now. Like we don't put anything on our walls. Like we don't have a ton of furniture, a ton of knickknacks. So like I've already picked out a place on our mantle where it's gonna go, and there's like literally nothing else there. So it's just gonna be sitting right there, and it's gonna be like the centerpiece of my whole living room. So as soon as it
Awesome.
comes in and I set it up there, I'm going to post it and I'm going to tag you in it so you can see it. I'm
Yes.
super excited about it because it's totally one of a kind, right?
Yes.
Yeah, it's awesome. I'm so excited. It's what do they call it? It's serendipity. Awesome. Thank you so much for being here. I don't want to keep you much longer, but this was an awesome experience for me. So definitely going to have you come back once you've got those RD credentials, so that you can spill out even more knowledge on everybody who's listening.
Okay. Well, thank you for having me. This was fun.
Yeah, thank you.